Today we're going to be continuing our series of covering the careers of the top 10 draft picks from each draft class of the 2000s. In this episode, we are covering the 2002 draft class, and I will say this is a pretty middle-of-the-road draft class. While there's some big names and future Hall of Famers that came from this year, it's far from the quality of classes that we're going to discuss in the future. Only 4 players from this class would make an All-Star game, and thus far, only 1 player has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's who we're starting it off with. Pick number 1 of the 2002 NBA draft would be Yao Ming. Now, if it hadn't been for injuries, there's certainly a chance that Yao could have gone down as one of the best big men of this era. Coming into the draft, there are a lot of comparisons that could be made with how scouts felt about Yao Ming and the recent hype that surrounded Victor Wembanyama. While the scouts were certainly not as high on Yao Ming as Victor, they believed he was a player who could go on to revolutionize the game and become a potentially unguardable player. He caught the eyes of scouts in the 2000 Summer Olympic Games and continued to turn heads through the 2001 to 2002 campaign in the China Basketball Association while playing for the Shanghai Sharks. In the playoffs that season, he averaged a jaw-dropping 38.9 points and 20.2 rebounds while shooting 76.6% from the field. Scouts were very high on his ability to score around the basket, of course, his shot blocking ability, and his unteachable 7'6" height. While Shaquille O'Neal was the top dog at the center position with his generational strength, some thought Yao Ming's frame could end up being a reasonable counter to the Diesel. However, there were some concerns that even at 7'6", it would not be enough to actually shut down stronger players like Shaquille O'Neal. While Ming had the height as an advantage, he came into the league around 290 pounds. While most players come into the league a bit underweight and still have time to grow into their bodies in the early years of the NBA, this would be one of the few gripes that scouts could come up with at the time. Despite the slight concerns, there were nowhere near enough of them for the Houston Rockets to pass on him with the first overall pick. He would have an immediate impact on the team, averaging 13.5 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game. He also made the All-Star game in only his rookie season. This would be a trend that would continue for the entirety of his career, making him one of the few in NBA history to make the All-Star game every single year that he spent in the league. Of course, there was that one season where he didn't play due to a foot injury, but we're not counting that. Along with the All-Star appearance, Yao Ming would also be named to the 2002 to 2003 All-Rookie team in this season. The following season, Ming would continue to make improvements to his game and put on some weight finally, making him an unmovable force in the paint. In only his second year in the league, he would lead the Rockets to the playoffs. However, they would be bounced in the first round by the Los Angeles Lakers. While it would be almost an impossible task of stopping Shaquille O'Neal in his prime, Ming did an incredible job of slowing him down throughout this series. In their 5 games matched up against each other, O'Neal would only average 16.2 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 2.8 blocks per game while shooting 51.5% from the field. And while those numbers might seem great, they're not that good compared to his regular season stats where he averaged 21.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game while shooting a league-leading 58.4% from the field. So I'd say Yao Ming did a pretty good job here. Even today, it's like pulling teeth trying to get a compliment on a fellow big man out of Shaq, but it was clear that Ming had his respect. When talking about him, O'Neal was quoted as saying, "He was very agile, he could play inside, he could play outside, and if he didn't have those injuries, he could have been up there in the top 5 centers to ever play the game." After this promising playoff run, it was clear that if the Rockets wanted to make any noise in the playoffs, they would have to get some help at the wing. While Ming was able to slow down Shaq throughout the series to the best of his abilities, Kobe Bryant was still running rampant and would kill Houston's chances of making it to the second round. As a result of this, the Rockets would make a blockbuster move and add Tracy McGrady to their roster. This would end up creating one of the biggest what-if duos of all time, as both Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady would have their primes cut short due to numerous injuries. However, in their early days as teammates, they would establish themselves as one of the strongest duos that the league had to offer. They once again made an appearance in the playoffs. However, they ran into an incredibly talented Dallas Mavericks team. While the Rockets were able to extend the series to 7 games, they would not be able to close out Game 7 with a win, and once again were sent home packing in the first round. After this season, injuries would sadly play a big role in the remainder of his career. In the 2005 to 2006 season, he was forced to get surgery on the big toe of his left foot, forcing him to miss 21 games. This would coincide with McGrady being forced to miss just under half of the season fighting back spasms that just kept coming back. Late in the year, Ming would once again injure his left foot, this time fracturing it and forcing him into a 6-month recovery process. This injury-ridden season from the team's two top stars would kill any chances that they had of making the playoffs. Early in the 2006 to 2007 season, Ming would once again suffer a crucial injury, this time fracturing the bone under his right knee. Around this time, there were rumblings that he had a genuine shot at MVP, but due to him missing nearly half of the season, those chances would go right out the window. Despite this, he still averaged an elite 25 points, 9.4 rebounds, and 2.0 blocks per game. While Ming missed a substantial amount of time this season, the Rockets were still able to make the playoffs, where they took on the Utah Jazz in the first round. Once again, this was a very hard-fought series by Houston. They would fall just short of advancing to the next round, losing in 7 games. The following season, Ming had his season cut short due to injury yet again. After making it through 55 games in the 2007 to 2008 season, he suffered a stress fracture in his left foot. Over the offseason, he underwent surgery, placing the screws in his foot in hopes of them strengthening it and preventing any future injuries. It would appear that their goal was met, as Yao Ming played in 77 games in the 2008-9 season, the most games that he played in since the 2004 to 2005 season. This season would be Yao's final trip to the playoffs, and it was actually his most successful postseason run. The Rockets were able to get past the Portland Trailblazers in 6 games. However, the Lakers would once again get the best of them in 7 games. Ming would suffer a hairline fracture in his left foot in Game 3 that kept him sidelined for the remaining 4 games of that series. Now, there's a strong chance if this injury didn't occur, the Rockets could have definitely won this series and could have been primed for even a trip to the NBA Finals, some might say. Surgery for this injury would keep him sidelined for the entirety of the 2009 to 2010 season, and before Yao could make his return, the Rockets would trade McGrady from the team, ending what on paper was one of the strongest duos of the era, before they really got a chance to see where it could go. When talking about Ming and their time together, T-Mac was quoted as saying, "Yao was complete. Offensively, he was one of the most skilled players in his time. Left hand, right hand, jump hook, mid-range, free throws. He had it all. He even handled the ball in transition and made the right basketball plays. He was tough, man. He was real tough." In an article that he wrote for ESPN, McGrady said, "When I got traded to the Houston Rockets in 2004, I really didn't know Yao Ming. He'd been in the league a few years, we'd both been to the All-Star game, and we played against each other a few times, but I had never talked to him. I didn't think he could speak any English, and I was worried about that. I thought, how is this going to work? I had just won the last 2 scoring titles with the Orlando Magic, but I was so excited to be playing with a great big man that I knew I was going to have to work with him and feed him the ball. But to do that, we needed communication. When I finally met him, I realized 2 things. He does speak English, and not only does he speak it, he has an amazing sense of humor. I love seeing his personality come out more and more over the years as he got more comfortable in Houston. That's how I really learned what an amazing person he is. He will sometimes just pretend he doesn't speak English. He does that even to this day. Yao is truly a great and humble person. You just can't recognize his accomplishments off the court without seeing his kindness and humbleness off it. I am proud to call Yao my friend. He opened so many doors. He personally put me in position to have a life after basketball. I'm so lucky to have a chance to know him, play with him, and work with him. He has a legacy very few have, and he has been and will continue to be a great influence. It's what he does. It's who he is." After only a 5-game return in the 2010 to 11 season, Ming would suffer a stress fracture in his left ankle, forcing him to miss the remainder of the season. This would be the injury that put an end to his career. Despite only making it 8 years in the league, Ming would finish his career with 8 All-Star appearances, 5 All-NBA selections, a 2002 to 2003 All-Rookie selection, and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016. If he'd been able to stay healthy, it's not really a stretch to believe that he could have lasted probably twice as long as he did, and he would have been able to establish himself as one of the most talented big men of all time, although I'm sure a lot of you already think that is the case. After retirement, Yao would be named as the president of the Chinese Basketball Association and now resides in Shanghai, China. Up next, we got another player that would have their career cut extremely short due to injuries. Coming into the 2002 NBA draft, Jay Williams was one of the most promising prospects that the league had to offer. He was an elite scorer during his 3 years at Duke and was a driving force in the team winning the NCAA championship in the 2000 to 2001 season. Scouts were very high on his court vision, ability to get to the hoop, playmaking ability, and of course his elite jump shot. However, there were definitely some concerns that despite being a skilled playmaker, that he would sometimes shoot the ball a little too much and he was a bit too reckless with the ball at certain times. Despite this, the Chicago Bulls selected him with the 2nd overall pick. He showed a fair amount of promise in his rookie season and took over as the team's starting point guard relatively early on in the season, and he averaged a solid 9.5 points, 2.6 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 1.1 steals per game. But some of his flaws did shine through, unfortunately. His questionable shot selection led to him shooting pretty spotty at times from the field, and he also averaged 2.3 turnovers per game, but that's not really out of the ordinary for a young guard attempting to adjust to the NBA flow of things. He earned a spot on the 2002 to 2003 All-Rookie team, however, this would sadly be the only season that he actually spent in the NBA. On June 19, 2003, Williams would be involved in a tragic motorcycle accident that would put an end to his NBA career for good. When recounting the event, Williams was quoted as saying, "So I come from Durham, working out. Coach K tells me he thinks I'm going to be different. I feel like I'm going to be different. My shot is better, I'm way more fluid, my condition is way better. So yeah, I literally drove down on my bike to my agent's house in Chicago, about 2.5 miles from where I was downtown, and I was leaving his house. I didn't have any protective gear on, no helmet, no jacket, because there was no helmet law in Illinois at that state of time. Revved my engine once with a new muffler on the back, had the bike in neutral, was fine. Second time I did it louder than the first, and in the middle of my third rev, I just heard the bike go click click. The bike popped up on me out of nowhere, and the next thing I know, when I grab onto the handlebars, man, the bottom part of the wheel spins out, and I'm headed towards a utility pole going 65, 70 miles an hour. Clipped the whole left side of my body. My body flings around in the air. My chest lands on the sidewalk. My legs are kind of up on the curb and the pavement as if I'm laying on my side, like with both knees on top of each other. But my chest is on the grassy knoll area between the curb and the sidewalk, as if I'm laying on my stomach. And it was at that moment I realized something really bad has happened. I thought I was paralyzed, and I felt as if somebody was pouring hot, scalding water on the lower portion of my body. But every time I looked at my hands after touching my legs, I didn't see blood. I mean, I start screaming out right away that I threw it all away. I threw it all away. You're so in tune with your body as an athlete, I just knew right then and there that I didn't think I was ever going to be the same. That sent me into a very, very deep state of depression. In a separate interview when talking about life following the crash, Williams said, "I remember lying in my bed and I'm just tired of being here. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was so afraid to face people, and I didn't really know who I was, and I didn't really want anybody to see me, and I didn't really want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk about it. I mean, to the point where I sat there and I had this pair of scissors in my hand. I just kept going on my wrist. I wasn't trying to go sideways. I was going vertical. I didn't want to be here at all." Williams would suffer a fractured pelvis, a severed main nerve in his leg, and 3 torn ligaments in his left knee due to this crash, and it was clear that he would never be able to play in the NBA again. And the Bulls cut him from the roster, but did pay him out $3 million to get through his recovery process. Through this lengthy process, he would become addicted to painkillers along with some other drugs. While this would be the lowest of lows an athlete can find themselves in, and thankfully, Williams didn't act on any of those dark thoughts, and he is still with us today. He's since spent years at ESPN as an NBA analyst before having his show almost canceled in June of 2023 as a part of the company's massive budget cuts. Thankfully, though, he avoided those layoffs and got to keep his show and still works for those companies to this day. The player that went 3rd overall in the 2002 NBA draft class would go on to have a very successful and long career as a starting caliber player. Mike Dunleavy Jr. is the son of Mike Dunleavy, who spent 11 years in the league playing from 1976 to 1990. Just 12 years after his retirement, his son would be ready to make his own mark in the league. Coming into the draft, Dunleavy Jr. would be a member of the ultra-talented Duke team that featured a handful of players that would be taken in this draft class. He was coming off of an all-conference season and won an NCAA title in the 2000 to 2001 season. Scouts were insanely high on his basketball IQ, outside shot, and ability to almost always make the right play on both sides of the ball. However, there were some concerns on if he would be athletic enough to keep up at the NBA level. The Golden State Warriors selected him with the 3rd overall pick in the draft, where he would spend the first 4 seasons of his career. In that time, he would serve mainly as the team's starting small forward. However, towards the tail end of his stint in Golden State, he would begin to take on more of a bench role. Midway through the 2006 to 2007 season, Dunleavy would be traded to the Indiana Pacers. The deal sent Dunleavy, Troy Murphy, Ike Diagu, and Keith McLeod to the Pacers, and in return, they received Steven Jackson, Al Harrington, Sharonis Jasikevičius, and Josh Powell. There were some character concerns around this time surrounding Dunleavy, with the then Warriors GM Chris Mullin saying, "The way Mike performed, the way he conducted himself, and the way we run our organization, we both felt it was something that we wanted." He would get a much larger role with the Pacers in his 2nd season with the team, and he would have the best season of his career, starting in all 82 games and averaging 19.1 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game, while shooting a very efficient 42.4% from 3. The following season, he would have his season cut short due to a right knee injury, being only able to play in 14 games. After his injury, he was never able to fully regain his starting role in Indiana. After this season, Dunleavy Jr. signed a 2-year, $6 million deal with the Chicago Bulls. In his 2nd season with the team, he would start in all 63 games that he played in, the first time that he had a full-time starting role since the 2007 to 2008 season. In the 2016-17 season, Dunleavy would be traded along with the rights to Vladimir Veremenko to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Albert Miralles. However, after just 23 games with the team, he would be traded to the Atlanta Hawks along with Mo Williams and a 1st-round pick for Kyle Korver. After finishing out this season, Dunleavy Jr. would retire from the league after 15 years. Back in June of 2023, Dunleavy would be announced as the general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Not a bad gig if you ask me. Up next, we got a player who would thrive in a bench role, putting together a very respectable NBA career. Drew Gooden entered the draft coming off of being named the Player of the Year in the Big 12. Scouts were very high on his versatile offensive game and rebounding ability, but there were some concerns about if he would be big enough to play the power forward position at an NBA level. The Memphis Grizzlies picked him up with the 4th overall pick. However, they would trade him after just 51 games with the team. The deal sent Gooden and Gordon Giricek to the Orlando Magic for Mike Miller, Ryan Humphrey, and 2 draft picks. After 2 seasons with the team, he would be dealt yet again, this time to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Gooden, Anderson Varejao, and Stephen Hunter would land in Cleveland, while Tony Battie and 2 second-round draft picks would be sent to the Magic. Gooden was part of a Cavs roster that took on the San Antonio Spurs in the 2006 to 2007 NBA Finals. This would be the deepest playoff run of his entire career. However, the Spurs would prove to be far too deep of a team for the Cavaliers to keep up with, and they would end up getting swept. In that series, Gooden averaged a very respectable 12.8 points and 8.3 rebounds per game. In the 2008 to 2009 season, Gooden would once again be dealt. This was a huge 3-team trade that sent Gooden, Larry Hughes, Shannon Brown, and Cedric Simmons to the Bulls, Wally Zerbiak, Delonte West, Joe Smith, and Ben Wallace to the Cavaliers, and Ira Newble, Donyell Marshall, and Adrian Griffin to the Seattle Supersonics. Before even spending 1 year with the Chicago Bulls, he was traded along with Cedric Simmons, Andre Nocioni, and Michael Ruffin to the Sacramento Kings for Brad Miller and John Salmons. After 1 game with the Kings, he would have his contract bought out and spent the remainder of the 2008 to 2009 season with the San Antonio Spurs. In the offseason, he signed with the Dallas Mavericks. However, he would be traded before spending a full season with the team. I will say right now, Drew Gooden has been all over the place. This man was getting dealt out like crazy. This deal sending him to the Mavericks would send Gooden, Josh Howard, James Singleton, and Quentin Ross to the Washington Wizards for Caron Butler, Brendan Haywood, and Deshaun Stevenson. Just 4 days after this deal, he was part of a 3-team deal that sent him back to the Los Angeles Clippers. In the following offseason, he signed a 3-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks where he would play out the entirety of his contract. In the 2013 to 14 offseason, he signed the final deal of his career, a 3-year contract to bring him back to the Washington Wizards. While most being known for the amount of teams that he's played for rather than his on-court play, Gooden still had a very respectable career, averaging 11.0 points and 7.1 rebounds per game throughout his 14 years in the league. After retirement, Gooden landed a gig with NBC Sports Washington as a broadcaster. Now, the 5th overall pick is potentially the first from this draft class that could be considered a true bust as a result of their on-court play. Coming into the league, the bar was set extremely high for Nicolo Schizvili. He was thought of as a 7-footer with a skill set that made it possible for him to play like a shooting guard. Scouts were in love with his outside shot and his ability to move for his size. Some were even comparing him to a more athletic Dirk Nowitzki. However, the main concern was that he was still a very raw talent. Had he been selected to a different organization, there's certainly a chance that his career could have played out far differently than it had. However, he got off to a very slow start with the Denver Nuggets. While he started in 16 games and played in 81 in his rookie season, he would not play in more than 39 games or start in another game following this year. After 2 full seasons in Denver, he would be traded midway through the 2004 to 2005 season to the Golden State Warriors. The deal sent Schizvili and Rodney White for Eduardo Najera, Luis Flores, and a first-round pick. In the following offseason, he would sign with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but was traded to the Phoenix Suns midway through the season for a second-round draft pick. After playing 12 games with the Suns in the regular season and 4 in their postseason run, he would ultimately retire from the league and begin his overseas career, where he would end up playing in the Spanish League, Italian League, and the Greek League. The player selected 6th overall is another player from this draft class who would have his career cut short due to forces that he couldn't control. Juan Wagner entered the draft coming off of an all-conference appearance at Memphis. Scouts were in love with his quick first step, ability to get to the hoop, and the deep bag he had around the basket. However, it was clear that his shot selection needed to be a bit more refined. The Cleveland Cavaliers still selected him with the 6th overall pick, and things would get off to a solid start, with Wagner having the best season of his entire career in his rookie year. In this season, he averaged 13.4 points, but he wasn't the most efficient from the field, shooting 36.9%. He would begin to see a reduced role as his time in Cleveland went on and would miss the entirety of the 2005 to 2006 season due to Wagner developing ulcerative colitis. The Cavaliers would not pick up their team option on this deal, leading to him becoming a free agent. Wagner's colitis was not responding to any medicine that was prescribed to him, and in 2005, he would have half of his colon removed. In the 2006 offseason, he signed a 2-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. However, he would only spend 1 game with the team before they bought out his contract, and he would be forced into retirement at just the age of 23. Had Wagner not been hampered by his health issues, there's a strong chance that he would have been able to deliver on the promise that he showed in his rookie season. Nowadays, he gets to watch his son DJ play for Kentucky and see if he can make an impact on the court. Now, despite not being one of the 4 players from this draft class to make an all-star appearance, this next player had one of the best careers out of this entire draft class. Ney was one of the few players in this draft class to make the jump straight out of high school and go on to have a very successful career in the NBA. He would play on the Brazilian national team, which interested NBA scouts very much. Coming into the draft, scouts were in love with his athletic ability, how he was able to jump out of the gym, and that he possessed elite speed for his position. This also aided in him being a great shot blocker and a high-energy interior defender. But some felt like he deferred to his teammates a bit too much, and he struggled as a perimeter defender. New York Knicks selected him with the 7th overall pick. However, he would be traded to the Denver Nuggets along with Marcus Camby and Mark Jackson for Antonio McDyess, Frank Williams, and a 2003 second-round draft pick. Nene would have an immediate impact on the team in his rookie season, averaging 10.5 points and 6.1 rebounds per game, while shooting a very efficient 51.9% from the field. He earned a spot on the 2002 to 2003 All-Rookie team. In the following season, he would take over as the team's starting power forward and saw a slight increase in his numbers. His next 2 seasons would be riddled with injuries, unfortunately, causing him to only play in 56 total games. But he would have a great bounce-back year in the 2006 to 2007 season, averaging 12.2 points and 7 rebounds per game. However, his next season would once again be cut short due to injuries, only participating in 16 games. In the 2008 to 2009 season, he would reclaim his starting spot, this time at the center position. He averaged a career high of 14.6 points per game and would have the deepest playoff run of his entire career. They took down the New Orleans Hornets and Dallas Mavericks both in 5 games to set up a matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers, in the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, they lost that series in 6 games. Nene would play 2 more full seasons with the Nuggets before being traded during the 2011-12 season. The 3-team deal would ultimately end up with Nene, Brian Cook, and a 2015 second-round pick on the Wizards, JaVale McGee and Ronnie Turiaf on the Nuggets, and Nick Young on the Clippers. Nene would bounce in and out of the starting rotation throughout his time with the Wizards. The 2016 offseason, he signed a deal with the Houston Rockets where he would end up coming off the bench. Nene was an optimal player in the James Harden-led offense that the Rockets ran around this time. He was never a player who needed the ball in his hands to be effective and was always a great rebounder. Sadly, lingering hip issues would keep him sidelined through the entirety of the 2019-20 season. However, he would be a huge part of a 4-team, 20-player trade where he would end up on the Atlanta Hawks. They would end up waiving Nene, putting an end to his 17-year NBA career. After retiring from basketball, he would become involved with church activities back in Brazil. Up next, we have another player from this draft class that had a solid career as a journeyman. Chris Wilcox entered the draft coming off of an all-conference selection and being a driving force in Maryland, winning the 2001-2002 NCAA title. Scouts were very high on his elite leaping ability for a big man, his deep bag in the post, and his shot blocking ability. However, many thought that he was still a bit of a raw talent and could have used a year or 2 more in college. The Los Angeles Clippers still picked him with the 8th overall pick. This put Wilcox in a very odd spot as the team already had Elton Brand as their center at the time. As a result of this, he struggled to break into the starting lineup consistently during his time with the Clippers. He would remain on the team until midway through the 2005-2006 season, where he was traded to the Seattle Supersonics for Vladimir Radmanovic. Wilcox would take over as the starting power forward for the Supersonics, where he would have the best season of his entire career. The 2006-2007 campaign, he would average 13.5 points and 7.7 rebounds while shooting 52.9% from the field. Along with this, he would start in 81 out of 82 games that he played in. He would see his role diminished in Seattle following this season, and midway through the 2008-2009 season, he was traded to the New York Knicks for Malik Rose. After finishing out the season in New York, he would sign with the Detroit Pistons in free agency. In his 2 seasons with the Pistons, he would jump in and out of the starting lineup, serving as a very consistent option. And in the 2011 offseason, Wilcox would sign with the Boston Celtics, where he would spend the final 2 seasons of his NBA career. He mainly came off the bench in Boston, starting on very rare occasions. Wilcox would retire after 11 years in the league, putting together a very solid career. In 2020, when the virus hit, Wilcox spent a lot of his time creating Wilcox Distribution LLC, which was a company focused on stopping the disease. The player selected with the 9th overall pick was easily one of the best from this draft class, and personally one of my favorites. Amar'e Stoudemire made the jump from high school straight to the NBA. While this ends up being a career-altering choice in a very negative way for a lot of players, this would certainly not be the case for Stoudemire. Coming into the draft, scouts were very high on his rebounding ability and elite athleticism. There were some skeptics that thought he was not yet mature enough to handle the intricacies of the game at an NBA level. The Phoenix Suns, however, would select him with the 9th overall pick, a decision they would definitely not go on to regret. He almost instantly took over as the team's starting power forward, making an immediate impact on an already contending roster. The 2004-2005 season, Stoudemire would make the first All-Star appearance of his career, averaging a career-high 26 points per game. This could come in part to the Suns adding Steve Nash to their roster. These two would go on to be one of the most dangerous pick-and-roll duos that the league had to offer. Phoenix would make a deep playoff run, sweeping the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round, getting past the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games in the second round. However, they would be eliminated in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals by the San Antonio Spurs. Nash would dedicate a section of a Players Tribune article to Stoudemire saying, "What do they say about men with big hands? They have quick feet?" Amar'e Stoudemire had both, and he made me look like an artist at times. Thanks, big man. It will always hurt that Phoenix Suns fans didn't get the championship they deserved during our run. Yes, we had some bad luck, but I always look back at it and think I could have made one more shot or not forced a turnover or made a better pass, but I don't regret anything. The arena was always sold out and rocking. It was the time of my life. Nash and Stoudemire would make one more trip to the Western Conference Finals together. However, they would be eliminated again just short of the finals, this time by the Los Angeles Lakers in 6 games. In the following offseason, Stoudemire would make a blockbuster move and sign with the New York Knicks, where eventually Carmelo Anthony would join him later on in the season via a trade. Injuries would begin to take an effect on him following his first year in New York, but he would still be a very serviceable big man. He would have his 2012-13 season cut short after it was announced that he underwent a knee debridement. While he suffered through some knee issues in Phoenix, they became much more serious and frequent during his stint with the Knicks. Following this injury, he would bounce in and out of the starting lineup. While he was far from the all-NBA player that he once was, he was still a very solid option at the power forward position or the center position, wherever the Knicks really needed him to play at the time. The 2014-15 season, the Knicks would buy out his contract, allowing him to finish the season with the Dallas Mavericks. Following his short stint with the Mavericks, Stoudemire would play his final season with the Miami Heat. He missed a good chunk of the year due to knee soreness, and it was clear that his time in the league was coming to an end. However, he stepped up in a big way for the team, taking over as the starting center after Hassan Whiteside was injured. Then he would end up joining a professional league in Israel the following season. After retiring, Stoudemire would spend time as a Brooklyn Nets player development assistant coach. Rounding out the top 10 is another all-star caliber player who went on to have a great NBA career. Caron Butler entered the 2002 NBA draft coming off of an all-conference season at UConn. Scouts believe that he was nearly a complete package on the offensive end and an elite perimeter defender. However, there were some concerns about his shot selection and if he was going to be able to keep up with quicker guards and forwards at the NBA level. The Miami Heat would end up selecting him with the 10th overall pick, and he made an instant impact on the team, becoming the full-time starter in his rookie season. Butler had a great 2-year stint with Miami, however, it was just too enticing and a no-brainer for the Miami Heat to include him in a package that landed them Shaquille O'Neal. The deal sent Butler, Lamar Odom, Brian Grant, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick to the Lakers, all for Shaq. He would spend only one season with the Lakers where he served as the team's starting small forward. However, in the offseason, the Lakers would send him and Chucky Atkins to the Washington Wizards for Kwame Brown and Laron Profit. Butler would see a much bigger role with the Wizards, where he would go on to make back-to-back All-Star appearances. His best year came in the 2008-2009 season, where he averaged 20.8 points, 6.2 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 1.6 steals per game, but somehow that year he didn't make the All-Star game. His time in Washington would come to an end in the 2009-2010 season when he was traded to the Dallas Mavericks along with Brendan Haywood and Deshaun Stevenson for Josh Howard, Drew Gooden, James Singleton, and Quentin Ross. While the Mavericks would go on to win the 2011 NBA title, Butler would not be able to participate in the series as he missed nearly half of the season after undergoing surgery to repair a torn tendon. Following the championship, Butler would sign a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. After 2 years with the Clippers, Butler would be a part of a deal that sent him and Eric Bledsoe to the Phoenix Suns in a 3-team trade. However, the Suns would quickly deal him to the Milwaukee Bucks. Later in the year, Butler would have his contract bought out and he signed with the Oklahoma City Thunder. In the 2014 offseason, Butler would sign a 2-year, $9 million deal with the Detroit Pistons. After just 1 year with that team, he was traded back to the Bucks alongside Sean Williams for Ersan Ilyasova. However, he was waived from the team. Butler then signed with the Sacramento Kings, where he would play in 17 games in what would be his final year of his 14-year career. Butler retired as a 2-time All-Star, 1-time NBA champion, and a member of the 2002-2003 All-Rookie team. Butler now serves as an assistant coach for the Miami Heat organization. Now, if you guys did enjoy this video, all I gotta ask you to do is drop a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are brand new. If you want some more NBA content, browse around the channel. We will be coming out with the top 10 picks of the 2003 NBA draft class very shortly.